TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations.
Shalom, Erev Tov, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. The remains of deceased hostage Dror O has been returned 782 days after the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates committed the October 7th massacre in southern Israel. Defense Minister Yisrael Katz stresses Israel's resolve to fulfill its war objectives vis-à-vis the Islamist Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Germany stresses Israel's justification of striking Hezbollah in self-defense. The remains of deceased hostage Dror O have been returned to Israel 782 days after the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates committed their heinous massacre against Israel's southern communities on October 7th of 2023. Dror was kidnapped from his home in the community of Be'eri together with his two little children and his nephew by members of the Iranian proxy Palestinian Islamic Jihad on October 7th. His wife Yonat was regrettably brutally murdered on that very day, and his eldest son Yaheli, who spent the night out of their house, was spared from the horrors that the Palestinian terror groups inflicted upon his family and the southern communities of Israel. Meanwhile, Dror's two children were subsequently released from Hamas captivity in the first deal that was struck during the latter part of November of 2023. However, their father's remains were kept for 2 whole years in captivity by the abhorrent terror groups in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, during a state ceremony commemorating Israel's first prime minister, the late David Ben-Gurion, President Yitzhak Herzog said that Israel breathes a sigh of relief that Dror O has finally returned home for burial in Israel.
We will all pray for the speedy recovery of all of our wounded, both physically and mentally. We will all pray for the prompt return of all the deceased hostages, and we breathe a sigh of relief that Dror O returned home tonight. We will all pray and wish great success to our sisters and brothers, the soldiers of the IDF and security forces wherever they may be.
It is important to note that Israel is entering into election season, as parliamentary elections are expected to be held no later than October 27, 2026. Therefore, amid deep-rooted divisions within Israeli society that played a major role in the calculus of Israel's enemies to launch their multi-front war against it, starting with Hamas's onslaught of October 7th of 2023, Israeli President Yitzhak Herzog is now calling on all Israeli citizens to engage in a civilized, non-sectarian fashion that enshrines the concept of institutional non-sectarianism and respect for state institutions within the deeply divisive and even toxic political discourse.
My dear brothers and sisters, we find ourselves in a testing moment for Israel's institutional non-sectarianism, an existential moment even. We already know what happens in an election year: harsh language, often violent, on the social networks, at intersections, in parliament, sometimes even around the Shabbat table. Words that were reserved for enemies from the outside are thrown at those who disagrees with me from within. Passion blurs boundaries and leads to dangerous places. I am not suggesting silencing disputes. I also don't pretend to claim that our debates are small or technical. They are very principled, values-oriented, and deep-rooted. But precisely because of this, I would like to propose, here at the foot of the grave of our first Prime Minister and proclaimer of the state, a true concept of state brotherhood. Such state brotherhood should include 3 components. First, maintaining the boundaries of discourse. It is possible to criticize harshly, but legitimacy must not be denied. This obligation is twofold and compounded for political, media, and social leaders. Second, to respect the shared institutions. The courts, the Knesset, the government, the IDF, the police, the media, civil society, and all other state institutions. These are not playgrounds for one camp or another, and they are certainly not battlefields. These are infrastructures rooted in trust. We must not burn down the house to replace the furniture. In this context of respecting the institutions of the state and sanctifying statehood, I would like to tell you, the members of the IDF General Staff Forum headed by you, my Honorable Chief of the IDF General Staff, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, that we salute you and appreciate your work day and night for the sake of our security, for the sake of security for the citizens of the State of Israel. And through you, to all IDF soldiers of all ranks and positions, I relay the blessing of strength and courage. The face of the IDF is the face of institutional non-sectarianism, among other things, because Ben-Gurion shaped the IDF as an institutional non-sectarian army and clearly defined the IDF's relations with the political echelon. It is not for nothing that the public's trust in the IDF is so high, certainly in relation to any other institution in Israel, because the IDF is us. It is our daughters and sons. It is, look at me and do likewise. Judges 7 verse 17 in KJV, it is precisely out of this appreciation, and especially at this time, that I call for placing Israeli brotherhood before our eyes, for respecting the disagreements when they exist, and for holding the necessary and important debates in the right place, in the right way, for the sake of our state security, for the trust of the public, for the sake of us all. And the third component, remembering that every election ends the morning after. After them there will be results. There will be those who will be happy, and there will be those who will be disappointed. Deep down, this is less important than the question, can we still look each other in the eye, live together, build together a common Israeli tomorrow?
Turning to Jerusalem, where Defense Minister Yisrael Katz addressed the Israeli parliament's plenum, during the course of which he emphasized that the Israeli government remains unwavering in its commitment to fulfill all of the war's objectives.
We remain completely committed to fulfilling all of the war's objectives, first and foremost to disarm Hamas from its weapons, demilitarize Gaza, and to ensure that Hamas will not exist as any governing or other entity in Gaza. The operation to destroy all of the terror tunnels of Hamas in Gaza and all of the territory that is under Israel's control, which is the majority of the territory, up to the last tunnel, is proceeding very well.
Jerusalem's top defense official went on to highlight that unless President Trump's 20-point plan is achieved, Israel will step in to finish the job.
You know that Hamas in Gaza was pressuring their people in hotels in Doha to reach this agreement. They told them that they cannot handle the pressure any longer. But the Prime Minister, with the help of Minister Dermer, worked together with the President of the United States, and a maneuver led by the President of the United States commenced, a most important maneuver, as part of which he recruited Arab and Muslim countries to apply additional pressure on Hamas, and the result is one that we prayed for. But nobody believed we could achieve it in such a perfect way. Returning all of the living hostages immediately from the start, and returning the deceased hostages, here, look, the last two are left. One more Israeli civilian and one foreign worker for whom we are working, and the IDF remains in over 50% of Gaza. But this doesn't mean that Hamas just roams freely in the rest of the territory. Strategically, the IDF continues to control the rest of the territory. Yes, it is true that in the strip that they are present in, approximately 2 million people, at this moment there is a reality that no one has managed to frame correctly, in which Hamas is involved in aid distributions and other issues. However, the international body that President Trump is going to chair, and the International Stabilization Force, and all other relevant bodies, are supposed to take over the humanitarian distribution and to ensure that it doesn't fall into Hamas' hands. They are also expected to disarm Hamas from its weapons and to destroy all of the tunnels and terror infrastructure that exists there. If they don't do it, we will do it, in coordination and backing of the United States.
בתיאום, בגיבוי של ארצות הברית.
Defense Minister Katz also addressed the situation vis-à-vis Lebanon, where Hezbollah, by means of Iranian support, is trying to rehabilitate itself. However, according to Jerusalem's determined position, the ceasefire's terms and conditions will be vigorously enforced.
Since I assumed the post of defense minister, the IDF has operated in Lebanon based on a clear and concise principle. We will not allow any threat to emerge against the residents of the north of Israel, and the maximalist enforcement of the ceasefire will persist and will even deepen, as we had clearly proved in recent days when we eliminated the chief of general staff of Hezbollah, Tabatabai. There won't be quiet in Beirut and stability in Lebanon without security for the state of Israel. In recent months, we have operated to ensure that the government of Lebanon fulfills its commitments to expel the Hezbollah terror organization from southern Lebanon, to disarm it, not to allow it to develop armaments and unmanned aerial vehicles that will threaten our northern communities and the citizens of Israel. If the government of Lebanon does not fulfill its obligations, we will continue to operate with great force. In any event, we will not allow a return to the way things were prior to October 7th.
It is important to stress that irrespective of rhetoric emanating out of Arab or Muslim nations vis-à-vis Hezbollah and Lebanon, the international community, to include the United States in particular, are backing Israel's uncompromising approach towards the Iranian proxy in Lebanon. Speaking alongside visiting Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi in Berlin, German Foreign Minister Johann Vadeful urged the Lebanese army to fulfill its role in implementing its task of disarming Hezbollah.
Israel is rightly defending itself against Hezbollah. This has been the case in the past and remains a measure of self-defense for the country. On the other hand, we advocate that the Lebanese army increasingly take on the task of disarming Hezbollah.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. Please pray for our persecuted brothers and sisters worldwide. Pray also for the peace of Jerusalem and redemption of Israel. I'm Jonathan Essen wishing you an Erev Mevorach. Until our next broadcast. Shalom from Jerusalem.